Hey, howdy, hey, my brewing brothers and sisters. I'm Jamil Zainashev,
I'm Travis Campbell.
And I'm Mike Persine, and you're listening to Brew Strong.
and we're here with our dear friend Michael Mufasa Ferguson, uh, brewer extraordinaire, professional home brewer, everything else, uh, with a very storied history in the professional brewing scene. And we're going to be doing Q&A. Let's see here. Um, Before we get into that, I wanted to mention our good, lovely sponsor, Blickman Engineering, is going to be having a Black Friday sale, which is starting Monday, November 25th, and running through Cyber Monday, December 1st. And all the details of this, I don't have the exact details of it, but they're going to release those details on Sunday, November 24th. So one way to make sure you get that is to go to their website. You can sign up with your email address. They'll email you all the deals that are hitting for that week of deals they're going to have. And this is going to apply to both the Anvil site and the Blickman site. So whatever you're into, whether you like the sturdy, well-built, less bells and whistles Anvil stuff, or you like the higher end, more high-tech Blickman stuff, there's going to be deals on all that stuff, including gift cards, I believe. So check it out, blickmanengineering.com. The good folks there are, providing you an opportunity to upgrade your systems at a deal. So check it out. All right. Let's see here. Q&A, live Q&A. It's been a while. I'm confused. I don't know where I'm going.
I feel like we need to start off with the definition of Q&A. No, that's the wrong
Definition of
show.
Q&A. Well, I'll tell you one of the definitions of Q&A. If you have questions that you want to ask us, you can email them into brewstrong at thebrewingnetwork.com, and we will get those questions. You're not going to get an immediate answer, but we will cover them in the shows. And new questions that come in, we'll get on pretty much right away, and you can uh, get your answer off the air, or you can tune in live and you can ask your questions too. You can uh, go to the Facebook page when we're doing the shows, and you go to the comments section and you can ask your questions right there.
Yes, we are video casting straight through the Brewing Network's Facebook page right now.
Yes, there you go. All right. First question.
Sure. Brian writes on October 24th, 2024. Brian sent us a lot of excellent details about brewing a Belgian brut using a modified champagne method. I'm going to try to skim it down to the details because he gave us a lot of great info. Uh, Basically, he's brewing a Belgian brut, which starts off almost on a Belgian strong golden, while adding sugars and sugars and sugars to make it champagne style, etc. So starts off with a 1080 wort, ferments it with White Labs 570, um, pretty much standard fermentation till it slows. Then he adds pound of sugar per gallon, plus some champagne yeast to keep it going. So 5 gallon batch, 5 pounds of probably a corn sugar or dextrose. Um, Ferments it down to 1.004, so we're getting pretty dry. He estimates 13% ABV. This is the short version, gentlemen. Um, he adds bentonite to clarify around this point in time, which is a newer one on me. And then he feels like the beer is done for at that stage. Plate filters it into a keg, force carbs it to 2.2 volumes, and conditions it in a keg, and then adds about 200 grams of corn sugar in 5 gallons and bottles it into champagne bottles, adding a few grains of dry champagne yeast. He states EC1118. I'm not familiar with that yeast, to each bottle using the counter pressure filler. His goal is to bring this standard fermented and then the sugar added, developing a brute into 5 to 5.2 volumes of CO2. Stores his bottles 68, 72 degrees in the basement. We know nothing about that here in the Houston area. We don't have basements. 2 months later, the carbonation's not gone where he wants it to go. Additional details, he used the calculator in how to brew to add 3 volumes roughly, tagged on to 2.2, going to the 5.2. Didn't get it where he wanted. Is this the right way to calculate additional volumes? And any concerns with the process he took to use this modified forced carb and then natural carb to get to 5.2? That's a bit of rambling on my behalf. Let me clarify anything I can, gentlemen.
I think the way of adding, you're at 2.2 volumes and you want to get it up to 5.2 and using the calculation, how much sugar do I need? That works out fine. That should not be a problem. I think his problem is, he says a few grains of dry yeast. I don't know what he means by a few grains, but it's probably not quite enough. And instead of adding, per bottle, I would mix the whole thing with the yeast and the
5 gallons with the
sugar in the
sugar.
5 gallons, and then just bottle off of that.
Would you let it start before bottling, or would you add it, mix it, bottle?
You could do either. I think, since he would mix it in the keg and then, bottle off of that. So it's just difficult to bottle anything at 5.2 volumes.
You're right. Which I
it really is, because pressure kills yeast. But I don't think he's using enough EC1118. Now that's champagne yeast. It's the only one I use, even though you could get the Red Star Blanc. They're 5.5 grams in a package, so basically they're good for 6 gallons. So what he needs to do is weigh how much should go into the bottle. So he needs one of those miniature scales, and I would do basically I would let the pressure build up by itself. I would not force carb and then add. I just wouldn't. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One, you're starting at a deficit because you've got pressure on the yeast already. Okay, and pressure kills yeast. We know this is going to happen. So I would use the yeast to get all my volumes of pressure personally. And this is basically, once you've gone through the fermentation, you got it down to 10.4 and everything. Yes, mix all the sugar in at once. Make sure you have enough sugar, for one thing. So 200 grams is 4 ounces. 28 times 8 ounces.
Almost eight.
Right.
200 ml.
Right. 28 per. So he's looking at maybe adding a bit more, and I would use exactly the amount of yeast divided by how many bottles he gets out of his 5 gallons. That's what I would use. A few grains. The way he said it sounds like it wasn't enough.
Like a lot.
Doesn't sound like a lot.
Comment. Yeah.
Right. So it's a 5 gram package. So he should probably be using something like 1/10 of a gram every time he does it.
And this depends
that's still,
on.
Yeah.
And
because you should be getting what? How big are these bottles? I don't know, but when it comes to 750s, you're going to get 48. You're going to get 48 to 50 bottles. So he should be using 1/10 of a gram in each one of those bottles.
Versus just a little pinch.
Versus just a couple of grains.
Right.
But if he doesn't do the carbonation, he could actually mix that yeast into the entire batch.
Absolutely.
And then he can pour off.
And then you wouldn't have to worry about using 1/10 of a gram in each bottle. Right.
Yeah.
Right. So if he had done what you were recommending, Mike, Mufasa could have spiked the keg, got it rolling, then transfer fermenting beer into his champagne bottles that would have been at about 2.2 volumes, just let it keep going in the bottle,
Right.
which instead of being a modified champagne method, as he mentioned, it would have been something closer to a full-on champagne method, or would the whole process of fermentation, re-fermentation, be in the bottle for a full-on champagne method?
Well, I mean, that's full on
You-
champagne methods. If you're doing a brute, I mean, you're going to riddle the bottle, right? So you're
gotta
going to
freeze the neck and disgorgement
and disgorgement the whole bit, you know. So it's that's a process. that's a,
there is an
that's a,
excellent I think it's on the Maltose Falcons page. I think Drew wrote something up. He was big into doing it.
That's
And
one of the two references Brian had mentioned. Yes, the Maltose Falcons, and
yes.
also the other one was from a lady. What's her name? I have the whole text down here. And I found the video. Annie Johnson also
oh,
has a 1 hour-ish video on. If you're a member of the American Homebrewers Association, which should be our sponsor if they're not, um, you can watch the 1 hour-ish talk she gives where she describes going through the process, which I might have been, or might not have been listening to in the background at work today. I thought she was doing great until I had to turn it off.
right.
Champagne
Annie
method.
Johnson knows his stuff. Drew, Maltose Falcons. Takes me back. Jeez, I'm happy they're still going strong. Um, those are good references. He should have learned everything he needed to learn from that.
Yeah, Maltose Falcons, 50 years.
Yeah,
50 years
crazy.
now. Aren't they celebrating their 50 year now? Yep.
Yeah.
You two gentlemen remember that, don't you?
Oh yeah.
Yes, we
I'm
do.
old. All right.
I was too.
All right.
So that was his first question.
Well, let's leave his second part for after the break. Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll have more of his very long question right after this. All right, we're back. We're doing live Q&A, and we're deep in the middle of a question about why a method champenoise did not carbonate.
Yes, Brian has sent us this outstanding question, which, believe it or not, gentlemen, I did try to shorten it to get us the details. A little bit of addition to the question before the break, and if you're coming in late, hit the rewind button, please. So the combination in and of itself of the carbonation methods inherently is not going to be a problem with making not necessarily a good beer, but inherently could be a problem because you're going to have a hard time kicking off the yeast under pressure already in even higher gravity beer, is my understanding of what we said. So following up, he asked, was it enough sugar added? And we're not entirely sure because it sounds low, but he did use the calculator from How to Brew. So his follow-up question is, given the high ABV, any idea on how long it should take for it to generate the additional 3 volumes once bottled? Was 2 months any kind of a reasonable time to let this thing build up from 2.2 to 5 volumes, which it seems like we're fighting more than just alcohol. This is a lot of pressure.
Yes. Also, did he say anything about nutrient?
Only the bentonite for clarifying, nothing about nutrient.
Bentonite is basically a clay that's a wine that people use to clarify wine mostly.
Mm-hmm.
Beer people do use it, but if he didn't use nutrient, then he lost the battle. If there was
With
no
nutrient,
nutrient,
do you think 2 months was enough time?
no, I mean, I would think that more like 3 or 4 months is probably what he's actually looking at here, because if it's going to fight its way through the pressure and the alcohol, and EC 1118 with enough nutrient, you could force to 20%. So I mean, it's capable of doing it, but
And it may eventually carbonate up.
And it may eventually carbonate, but if he did not use nutrient, he's not going to get the full effect of that yeast. Got to use nutrient, and I suggest either Fermate O or Fermax.
And that's when he goes to bottle.
That's So if you're mixing everything up in the one container, which is what we suggest he should do,
right?
Then the nutrient goes in at the same time.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify because maybe he's thinking, oh, I should have added it, primary, but no,
Well,
you're
yeah,
talking
no,
when you
he
actually
should
go
have
to
vetted
bottle
it
it.
at
Well, that
primary.
too, but
Yeah.
Mhm.
add more at the
But
bottling.
especially at bottling, because now you have very little food for this yeast. It's under pressure and it's high alcohol. You need to have nutrition into that yeast, and so you gotta use a nutrient. Now he might have left that out. He might have used it, but didn't sound like he used it for bottling, and I think he should have.
Yeah, for better for worse, he didn't mention it. And Mufasa, that's outstanding that you mentioned the fact that we don't entirely know. He didn't just make an assumption. We're only going by the information we have in front of us.
Right.
You've almost developed two corollaries off of there. I had questions about that. I don't know if I need to extend the question further. Outstanding. And Brian, send us some of that beer. It sounds delicious, man.
Yeah, I'm in.
Yeah, I am too. Could he get it to Texas?
Outstanding.
All right. I think we're any thoughts on that? We can move on to, I have another short one here, Jamil. You
Yeah.
ready for the next one?
Yep.
All right. Ryan, who sent us this question on September 12th, 2024. Lest there be doubts, we are keeping up with new questions. Gents, I heard on one of your episodes a while back, you should never rack with silicone tubing due to oxygen absorption in your beer. I found that interesting as I prefer to use silicone for my tubing when racking due to its flexibility and ease of cleaning. What have you found in your travels that has made you averse to use silicone in this situation? What type of tubing would you recommend for racking?
Yeah, even the cheap vinyl is better than silicone because silicone is highly permeable to oxygen. They have some special silicone that's platinum cured. Costs a fortune, but it's crap. At least the ones that they put on a bottling line that I bought.
Tell us how you really feel.
So is it spending enough time in that silicone to pick up the oxygen?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. You can measure it with I've measured high oxygen levels coming through in tubing like that, just over the course of just a few feet. It,
Wow.
it picks up a ton of oxygen. You don't want to use silicone tubing.
Yeah.
Mufasa, we have to talk about
uh,
tubing, man. It's new
the
tubing.
the cheap basic vinyl tubing will transfer far less oxygen than silicone will. And the great thing about that is you buy yourself a box of it really cheap, and you do my favorite thing, which is snap yourself off a
Snap off.
fresh piece every so
Every
often.
time.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then it really works well. They do have some other brands of tubing. I think More Beer was selling one by something JJ something or JJ Fair or something. One of or some product
Was
that
it barrier tubing?
it was like a barrier tubing
Yeah.
and very low oxygen. It was pricey, but not like silicone cured platinum cured silicone pricing, and it worked
I think
quite well.
there's two lines of
Right.
that, right? There's the one that's truly glass line, which I have a hard time finding. The other one that just calls itself the barrier tubing.
Right.
Right.
But I'm pretty sure if I buy platinum cured silicone, it's probably Chinese lead cured silicone. So
Yes. So yeah, the cheap clear vinyl beverage tubing, you can get it in a fairly thin wall, and it's
yeah.
quite flexible even when it's cold. It's not it's not as flexible as silicone, but it
Right.
in a way that's better because it won't kink on you,
Mhm.
and when you're trying to rack something. So
Yeah.
Well,
I would
honestly, when you're
suggest barrier tubing.
yeah, I mean, if you're kegging, are you moving your keg while you're kegging? Are you gonna set it down, start the kegging process, and walk away till it's done? I don't need flexible hose once I start kegging necessarily,
mm.
and
Unless
that's when it
you're
gets cold.
kegging like a bunch of different ones, there's doing something with that
Or
requires
if
you to
you're
move stuff around.
you're bottle filling, or counter
Yeah.
pressure filling or something like that, and get some movements.
Sure.
But I've only ever used silicone tubing for hot side.
Can withstand a lot more heat than all the other vinyl tubings and such.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like my silicone. I might use too much silicone, but I do like silicone for its flexibility. But again, cold side, hopefully you're not working overly.
There you go. All right.
All right. I think the next question, which is also from this year, believe it or not, August 31st, 2024. I feel like he was messing with us. It's from Alfred Newman.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
That's
In
not
your
Alfred E. Newman.
Now he left out the E. Maybe it's just to avoid the junior. Who knows? You know, his father is Alfred E. He's just Alfred.
Hello,
No,
Newman.
could be that.
Hello,
I-
Jerry.
In your discussion on Weissbier many years ago, you mentioned the yeast can go funky after a bit. So German brewers will add lager yeast after fermentation to keep the beer from developing off flavors. Can you describe what this process would look like for a home brewer? Do you crash the beer, then add lager yeast, wet temp, etc.? Have tried to noodle through how this works, but I just get confused. Thanks. And yeah, banana enclosed in, I'm not sure if the town's real, so we'll just do that out too.
So I'm not
Plaster Valley or something, right?
I'm not sure the funky comment. I mean, all yeast over time can autolyze, and you can end up with some off flavors from that. But maybe
So
that's what the reference was to. But
but for step one though, that first half of that,
so
we're not sure if he picked that up from Brew Strong, that it can go funky.
possibly,
Okay.
but I think what I would have been referring to there is that a lot of these German brewers will filter out um, uh, their hef yeast, and
Hmm.
then they'll package with a lager yeast, which tends to be dustier and stays dustier. Um, and so when you're, inverting the bottle and stirring up the yeast, they get a better mix. It doesn't form a really tight pancake at the bottom.
Fewer
So,
chunks.
I
pardon?
did not realize that.
And and uh and also, you know, uh it you can put in a fresh yeast in there instead of one that's been through fermentation and is perhaps getting old. You filter that out, and you're putting a fresher yeast in there. You put a fresh pitch of lager yeast in, and so it doesn't really affect the flavor. It's just for those reasons. So uh, I don't know. Mufasa,
Are
you got thoughts on?
Um, that's, I mean, everything you said is true, but also, if a vice beer is done correctly, like a Hefeweizen, the haze will stay. Although, professionally, we always store the kegs upside down so that when you go to serve them, you turn them right side up and then
Mhm.
hook it up, and that
Yeah.
that helped a lot. But yeah, that's any yeast, like you said, will get funky after a while. It's been sitting around, especially if the bottle's been mistreated, heated up, and cooled down, and things like that. Um, Beer is
is it
tenacious, but it doesn't like change. Really, it doesn't like change. Um,
so would the lager yeast also turn funky? I mean, do you not have? I mean,
Sure.
I would think, well, probably improperly. We look at lager yeast as okay, that's a colder temperature yeast for fermentation purposes. Would it autolyze similarly to ale yeast? Any reason why it
Yes.
wouldn't?
I
Mhm.
don't see why it would be different.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just think
I mean,
about when you go to store your packages of yeast to brew with. It's like if you leave them
Although
warm, they're gonna go bad.
Yeah.
certain yeast will autolyze faster than other yeasts.
Yeah.
But
How healthy
the,
was it when it was pitched, kind of stuff. Too.
yeah, I think the point is they're removing the tired yeast, getting rid of
And
that,
adding new yeast.
adding in fresh yeast.
yeah,
So a little more stable, and then a little dustier. So when you're rolling the bottle or inverting a keg, it
M-
mixes in quite nicely.
Also, it sounds like he's keeping beer around a lot longer than he should be keeping beer
Yeah.
around.
I was gonna say, because everything I've ever read about Weiss beer, Hefeweizen, they are best enjoyed fresh.
Yep.
They're on the
It's like
clock.
Beaujolais Nouveau.
Yeah.
You don't want him hanging around a long time.
Yeah.
All right, that's some pro tips from the pros right there. I had not realized they had, I mean, I knew they had different yeast, but lager yeast, I was not expecting that. All right, we have a new question from Jimmy, and this one is from August 21st, 2023. Jamil, thanks to you and John for hosting Brewstrong. The yeast calculator on MrMulti.com does not work. Not sure if you knew that, Jamil. Is there another yeast calculator you endorse? Have you thought about publishing the source for the calculator that used to work for someone to recreate a working recreation? I ask you this all the time, Jamil. And we've made some attempts, but sorry, Jamil. I mean, if you'd like to answer to address the question or not, for Jimmy.
Yeah, it does not work on the website. Because the one that was on the website was done in Flash a long time ago, and they killed support for Flash. And so yeah. There are a number of yeast pitching calculators out there now. That have, copied, what I did. So you can use any number of those. A lot of people did, they would go like, look, it's different results. They'd try it at different points and go like, oh, no. And everybody likes the Mr. Multi one. But in general, I think you're okay with just about any of the yeast pitching rate calculators. Just find one that you like and use it, religiously, and just use the same one every time. And then, if you're getting the results that you want, then that's a good pitching rate for you. If the beer's not turning out the way you want, then you could try going a little bit higher, a little bit lower, and see if that helps you. And once you get that dialed in, just stick with that rate for that style of beer, and you should be good. And like I said, you can use probably any of the pitching rate calculators, and it'll be fine. Your ability to measure yeast is probably not as good as the calculator's ability to calculate
To
how much
calculate.
yeast you need.
I think you're right about that. And a lot of calculators, when they ask for the date of the stuff, will give you wildly ridiculous numbers if the calculator feels the date is too old.
Well, now you see, on my calculator, I actually went around and bought yeast from a bunch of different homebrew shops, and I actually did starters with them, and I did cell counts, and I based my data off of that. And that's where I got all my curve and my analysis from. And
Yeah.
funny, around the same time, Greg Doss was at White Lab or Y Yeast, and he was doing a similar thing. And our two curves were nearly identical.
Excellent.
Compared data. And so the fact that happened made me really believe in what I was doing was correct. And so that's why also you don't know how well the yeast was handled. So I got a lot of pushback from a lot of the yeast manufacturers. And there's great homebrew shops where, they get the yeast, they pay extra to have it shipped quickly and to throw a million ice packs in there. And the second it comes in, it goes right into the fridge. I've also seen homebrew shops where there's a box sitting on the floor of hot yeast packages that, God knows how long they've been there, but they're busy. I understand, but still, could be a thing. So, I went with kind of guaranteed numbers. If you followed the numbers that I gave you and the dates and everything I gave you, then I guarantee you your beer is going to ferment well and you won't have a problem.
Over pitching is never your problem.
Yeah, it rarely is a problem. So
True.
that's why I went with the numbers I did, because I would come across stuff that was like, man, this thing's dead already.
So have you compared it to John Palmer's calculations?
I'm sure John's calculations probably came from something I provided, or
I'm
From the
thinking
yeast
maybe
book.
that's why I was wondering if you had compared it. That's all.
yeah, a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, your beersmith will let you tweak some data to try to approach what yours does. I
Mhm.
mean, he has a decay rate, so to speak.
Right.
So I paid for Mr. Multi on my Android device back when it was on the market.
Yeah, don't do
So
that anymore.
well, you can't
Still-
anymore, but
still
I
out
was
there.
able to keep old versions of Android running so I can use my paid version of that outstanding
Oh, there you go.
calculator. But you can tweak like Brad Smith's Beer Smith's calculator to match the decay rate almost on a one-off. I haven't done enough data points to try to make it do it, but he's got some variables in there that'll let you get close.
Mhm.
But still, I mean, the and why everybody misses it, the great value of that calculator is the work you put in, not in the calculator itself, but the data behind the calculator,
Right.
and that's what's missed. And it,
Well,
it
that's the only
surprises
real way
me.
to do it, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Is proof positive experimentation and
yeah.
showing your results. Did
And if
you
what
show a difference between refrigerated dry yeast and non-refrigerated dry yeast?
I don't think at that point there were so few dry yeasts available that I
True,
don't think
true.
I did
That's
much
true.
with that. But yeah, the dry yeast, non-refrigerated, will decay faster. And I forget what I did with that, but I was mainly focused on all the wet yeasts out there.
Right.
But yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
back then you couldn't get me to use dry yeast, but now I almost use it
Yeah.
exclusively.
Yeah, there's some great dry yeast now,
Mhm.
and
I'm
they've
almost
really
convert.
come very far.
Yeah.
I
All right,
could just,
Mike, go ahead.
yeah, just my 2 cents from what I've been hearing around the newer technologies and stuff is dry yeast is way more viable than it's ever been. Even the liquid yeast, I've heard the way that they are packaging these and growing these and the way that they're treating them, the viability is excellent. So
Mhm.
I've heard directly from Chris White where his new packages where he feels that yeast is guaranteed viable for the date on the back. So that's pretty exciting. The other thing I'll say
Viable,
is,
yes.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. And that's
How many
that's what
cells?
amazes me.
Yeah.
That's what
well,
amazes
like,
me is because Jamil, you
150
would sell
billion
more
now.
yeast than
Yeah.
anybody,
Okay.
and they don't want to pay you for your calculator so they can sell more yeast.
the
Oh,
one,
right.
Yeah,
the last
sorry.
thing I'll say is
Yeah,
on the more beer calculator, the thing I like about that is you can select which model to use. And so there's different models for stirred versus not stirred. And then you have like the Chris White model, which I think is straight out of the yeast book, versus the stirred Chris White model versus the non-stirred this other person. And you can kind of pick your model but like you said, garbage in, garbage out. If the
The
data's bad,
original
then
Mr. Malty had stirred and non-stirred. That's where it
yes,
yeah,
all
there you
comes
go.
from.
So,
yep.
but you got to
You're
get it
looking at the
working.
OG here.
Yeah, get it working. So I'm just trying to give him somewhere to go that, like, I actually use that to then develop my calculator in Excel using some VBA code and nerding out. So I can actually just hit a button and it calculates how much extract I need and the
Yeah.
volume of the starter. So I don't even screw around. But
All
All
right.
right.
yeah.
Let's take another short break. And when we come back, we'll have more of your questions right after this. All right, we're back. We're doing your questions live here on the air. If you're listening live, you can ask your questions in the chat, in the comment section. You go to the Facebook Brewing Network Facebook page, and you'll see the video playing, and you click in the comments there, and you can type in a question, and we will get you on the air here. Toot sweet. If you're listening on the podcast, well, then email your question to brewstrong@thebrewingnetwork.com, and we'll get to them pretty quick. We're actually all caught up and keeping them going. All right. Next question.
Yeah, we're going to jump in the Wayback Machine now. After being somewhat current, we're going back to October 22nd, 2010.
Mm-hmm.
Chris begs, please, please, please do a show on the use of secondary vessels. Now, I don't think it's a full show here. So the question is, this seems to be one of the most divisive issues on these interwebs. Sorry, Chris, for where you've been reading your information. It would be great to have a Brew Strong show that would tackle the fact of secondaries aren't necessary for most beers. Where did this come from? When is this a good idea? When is it a good idea to use a secondary vessel? I think we can address this as a question now, not as a full show. Um, Chris believes he knows the answers. He probably figured them out in the last 14 years. Uh, so just, just
Or
some
he
thoughts
quit.
on secondary fermentation vessels, which I'm pretty sure he was referring to, versus primaries. Can we mediumish address single vessel, dual vessel fermentation?
You got a conical, all you need is one.
There
True.
can be only one.
Yeah. Back in the day, when I first started homebrewing, the reasoning was that if you transferred your beer to another fermenter, that it would clear faster and turn out better. And I'm just like, I have no idea why that would be the case. You're just resuspending a lot of stuff, and time is the only thing that really clears up. So I never understood that. And then people that said you needed it to get the beer to finish fermenting. Well, that's just because you didn't have good fermentation to start with, and stirring it up with the yeast helped, and adding some oxygen in there, because you got oxygen in there when you transferred, may have helped as well. Yeah, I don't really know why.
More likely, the
Sometimes,
oxygen will oxidize it more than
right,
it
right.
helps.
But a lot of times, commercial brewers will transfer from one vessel to another. Once they get clear beer, bright beer, they'll transfer it to another vessel, really more for packaging and to free up, a fermentation vessel. And they'll transfer it to like a bright beer tank,
When
where
when
the
you're when
last
you're
of the yeast falls out.
when you're brighting though, you're not expecting additional fermentation, are you?
No. And
And if your bright process is correct, you're absolutely not introducing oxygen.
ideally, yeah. It's hard to make it absolutely zero, but you
Right,
can get
right,
close.
right.
But I think, home brewers took that from commercial brewers. A lot of times home brewers will see what commercial brewers do and they go, well, that's the way to make the best beer possible. It's like, no, no, no. You have things you can do that the commercial brewers can't do because of the size and because of the need to be cost efficient. So,
Shaker
you
vessel.
can do all sorts of things that they can't do.
Mm.
So never think that, commercial is necessarily the way to go. But you see them, transferring into a dish bottom, tank. And that's really more for packaging, where, it's a broad bottom where the yeast can settle out really thin, and they've got a standpipe in the bottom so that they can just draw off clear beer, instead of having to worry about, pulling any um, yeast in, or tube in with, from the racking arm in a cylinder conical. But like Mufasa says, if you've got a cylinder conical, then you pretty much, that's all you need.
Right. I if I'm transferring for lagering, I will do that because I don't want it sitting on the yeast cake for the next
Right,
two
for a long
months.
time. Yeah.
Right. So that's the only time I would use secondary, just because I don't want that old yeast sitting on it. All you
Right.
need is that thin patina yeast in the dish bottom
Hmm.
or horizontal. to give you the aging process. So
Right.
that's the only time I would use a secondary vessel.
Yeah, the yeast underneath is just dying. It's not
Yes.
doing anything to help the beer. And I'm still using glass carboy for my fermentations.
I use
And
glass carboys. Yeah.
and you know, the beer drops clear, the yeast is nice and tight on the bottom, and then I snap myself off a fresh piece, and I I I rack to wherever I'm going, and you know.
But
There
Jamil,
you
what
have
about fruit?
I was going to ask that question.
it. Yeah. Yeah, if you want to add fruit in and you want to add it into a secondary, you can
Yeah,
absolutely
rack.
do that then. Yeah.
Back on the fruit.
Yeah.
Are you doing yourself any favors? Do you need to transfer? And then, I mean, some yeast is going to carry through. Most yeast has settled out, so they're going to be dropped out if you know. I mean, if your beer is 2 weeks old and you add fruit, do you need to transfer then add fruit, or can you add the fruit right on top of that 2 week old beer?
You could, you might, you know, depends what you're adding in. If you're adding a puree in, it's probably fine, you know, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, the fruit, especially the fruit purees, will ferment very quickly. You know, 24 hours and it's done, and then
Nice.
you
I have a
can
story about
rack
that.
off. Yeah. All right.
Tracking with a tilt, I made a pineapple hazy with pineapple puree. The 6 point jump in gravity was gone in 45 minutes. It consumed that it went up 6 points, and then within an hour it
Oh,
was back down to where it was on its way. So yeah,
interesting.
if you pitch it during primary or even the end of primary like I did, that sugar's gone. I mean, way gone.
Yeah, I
So
mean, it depends on how much you added,
yeah,
and you know,
I
you're
did
saying 6
9
points of
pounds for a
gravity.
10-gallon batch.
Oh.
Yeah. Huh. Cool. Yeah. Well,
Fructose be gone.
Dude, I
yeah.
calculated out it was 6. It added 6 points to the total beer because it's only 1030. I think what was it? I think it was 30 points per pound per gallon or something like that. No, it's like 12. I have to look it up, but it was really low. Like it wasn't as high as you'd think for
Yeah.
pineapple at least, and it was gone in minutes. I mean hours, like less than an hour. So be
Well, and
aware that goes off pretty quick.
it should go lower.
Yeah, it won't fully reflect because you've added alcohol. So when it looks like it's balanced out, you still have some more because you've
Still
added
a little more
alcohol
to
to
give.
spin it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, call
And
it 2
but
hours.
still, it's a whole lot.
and the
That's
water
incredible.
and the water in the pineapple as well.
Yeah.
Right.
So it was,
But
but it
yeah,
was wild. I
that's
have the
good.
charts. I'll send them to you.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if there's plenty of active yeast, you know, um, then yeah, it ferments out really fast because I mean, it's fructose is very easy for the yeast to chew through. Just about any yeast.
Now, fermentation of purees and fruit reduces the flavor. If you really want to get more flavor into the beer, then it's nice to have the beer be finished and maybe stabilized so that you could put it on fruit again without it fermenting so that you get the flavor.
Yeah, the only problem would be the sugars.
Yes,
You know, if you
exactly.
don't want any sweetness. Just
Or
depends.
bottle bombs.
Yeah.
Or bottle bombs. Yeah, we had a lot of those with the puree beers that were popular here in Houston for a year.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's a whole other show we don't want to have. But yeah, so yeah, that's 100%. It's hard to get that fruit flavor after it ferments back out.
And
But
at the end of the
all right,
day, you can do all that in your primary.
there you
True.
go.
There you
You brought it back. Thank you, Mike, because I was looking
All
for a
right.
way to bring it back.
I got you.
Outstanding. All right. Shane writes, just about a month before Chris wrote to us. Surely others have inquired. And I'll tell you, Shane, if they haven't, by that point in time, they have by now. Uh, in the last high gravity show, you touched on a subject that I would love to hear more about. The technique involving brewing a big word and adding water at bottling to make a smaller beer. So the essence is similar to what Budweiser does to make Budweiser. Was mentioned the big guys do this a lot. Sounds like it would work just as well in a light beer. I eat a Munich Helles, and now Mufasa's gonna reach through the screen and kill me. Or Kolsch. Oh my God, everyone's gonna kill me on this one. But I wonder if you would do as well with a hoppy beer, or a bigger beer. It seems like a lot of aspects could be inquired, such as hop utilization, yeast tolerances. Basically, I would love to get a 15, 20 gallons of good beer from 10-gallon batch.
Wow.
Wow, that is a lot of dilution.
That's a lot of
Yeah.
dilution, and it's not, that won't work.
Yeah.
But high gravity brewing has its advantages, as well as its detractions. But the main advantage is it acts like a bandpass filter by reducing stuff you don't want in the beer, and making it, and diluting the bad stuff, and at the same time putting the gravity where you want it to be if you were making a full batch and had it finish. It's easier for transport. It's easier to deal with the lower volume. But when you're talking 1 and 1.5 times the amount going in for dilution, I can't see that working at all. Jamil?
Yeah, 10%, 20% max.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
When I toured Budweiser in Fairfield, California, and correct me, Jamil, if I'm way off, but because this was a long time ago, I thought that's running out of the fermenter at like 7, almost 8%.
7, 8.
Yeah.
And then they cut it down to 4.2 or whatever. But yeah, that actually ends up not being as much water as you'd think.
Right.
It's
Yeah,
right.
about 15 years ago, they sold that
go
beer.
down to
Yeah.
5.2.
Yeah, and still, I mean, we're
Right.
talking about something I don't drink, so
right. I do.
mean, just
I'll have a
saying.
delicious Miller Lite.
Yeah, so people talk
DML.
about Budweiser as being watery. That might be a reason why. And the
Yeah.
reason a lot of these commercial brewers will do it is, for cost savings or for volume, for money. It's less turns of the brew plant,
Less
and
tanks.
you get higher volume, less tank space, et cetera, et cetera. I will say, at Heretic, when I would drink, like when I wanted something to drink, I would take Evil Cousin, which was at 8%, and I would add, as much as 50% water to it, or half water, and thin it out, and get myself a 4% beer that way. And one of the things it does with these hoppier beers is it tends to open up the bouquet quite a bit, and a lot
It's
of
like
the hops
whiskey.
will express themselves even better. Yeah, it's like
It's
whiskey.
like a nice whiskey.
Yeah.
Just hit it with a little
And
water.
so it does work. It will thin out the body and thin out the head retention and thin out the color. But if you're looking for something like that, you can brew a beer with extra body and extra head retention and extra hoppiness, and then then you can water it back. I imagine maybe from 10 gallons you could get to 15, I guess. Depends on what you like.
Yeah, so Shane's issue was that his friends were drinking his homebrew too fast. I'm thinking Shane needs to teach his friends how to homebrew themselves.
Yeah,
Right.
or
Teach a man to brew.
There you go.
I was gonna say too, though, there are inherent challenges with this because the water you are using needs to be. Now, correct me, Jamil. Again, I'm just kind of, this is what I would think is it needs to be sanitized and de-aerated.
Yeah,
which
You
you do
cannot
in
put
one step.
aerated water. Yeah, so
You
you'd have
boil
to
it.
do a full boil, and then that would
Mhm.
have to go. But then
Cover it.
somehow you'd have to cool it down to be able to go into your cold beer and not foam it really bad. And so there'd be some technological challenges with
And match your
as a
salts.
home brewer preparing this process water to be.
The best way to do it is to do it on the hot side. You could add as much as 20% of water, as long as you don't go below 80 degrees centigrade. You are
So that's pre-fermentation, Mufasa.
pre-fermentation. Yes.
Okay. Now, is that how Budweiser does it? Do we know that?
No, they do
They do
Bud
it
and
post.
Coors, they transported stuff
Pours.
and then added
Like
deoxygenated
while
water.
yeah.
A lot of
And
guys
then
in Golden,
carbonated.
Colorado, going to give us some emails right about now, Mufasa.
High gravity brewing is the thing. And it works. It works for the big boys.
But if you didn't want to have buy a bigger tank, let's say he doesn't have a fermenter that can do that, like to try to do it with the finished beer, heating it, de-aerating it, cooling it without re-aerating it,
Right.
and then getting it into
Carbonating
the
it.
beer.
I
Yeah,
would carbonate
carbonating
it
it
first.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like, man, you'd
And
have
then
to
add it to the beer.
you'd almost have to like rack it into a keg hot, put it in your fridge, carbonate it. I guess would that be kind of a process there? But
It sounds
yeah,
a little bit
lot.
rough. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
All right.
we could make just fine beer without having to dilute it. So I just think he needs to either brew more or get better friends.
Yeah, I was thinking Shane, go
Have-
reach out and
Have them chip in on a bigger brew system.
There you go.
yeah.
Yeah, bring in the investors. You want free beer?
Yep.
Help me. I should have done that.
All right. All right, we try to fit one more in real quick before the break. And Jamil, Kurt has been spelling your name the way he hears certain personnel pronounce it. He literally spelled it, "Hey John," and Jamil. I've been listening to Basic Brewing Radio and heard several of their listeners write about doing an overnight mash. So leaving the grains on the water overnight and then doing your boil first thing in the morning to save time. Just like to know your thoughts on this and if the water has to stay at mash temp all night. It's two questions generally, I guess: the effectiveness of an overnight mash and what do you think about the temperature of said overnight mash. Thanks and keep up the good work. You guys have shown me how to brew. Thank you, Kurt, for listening.
Michael?
Overnight mash, if you don't have temperature controls, sounds like you're doing a sour mash to me. If you have a way to keep it hot the whole time, why? I just don't. I don't see. What did he say? It saves some time.
Yeah, so I
It
can
literally
put some
takes
color in
more
on that.
time.
It literally takes
Well,
more time. Yeah. So
So when my son was first born and I wasn't sure when I get to brew again, I could set up the night before, start the mash. I had temperature control and I could crash. So I got up in the morning and I'd already mashed. I go straight to sparge and boil. So it doesn't save you time in the overall process, but it might save you time in the fact that while your whatever is happening in your life is not happening, you start your mash. 6, 8 hours later, you come back and you finish your brew day. That's the why. But you, as you were saying, temperature control. Otherwise, we're making a Goza or making a Berliner Weiss or a,
right. So I just in that respect, yeah, I suppose it's fine. I just never found the need for that. Home brewing, it's just like, you either have the time or you don't. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah.
So even having done it, I've always had the question: am I impacting my fermentability in my body?
I
Might
mean,
be.
yeah, I think you might be. I mean, a 6-hour mash. Wow.
I
You're
mean,
coming over, man. We're gonna do it.
I was gonna say, if you were to do something like this, perhaps get to uh, mash out temperatures and
Kind of hold
so
it.
you can denature the enzymes and then hold it
Okay.
there.
See, that makes sense to me.
Okay, so start early. Get your mash hour, 75 to 90 minutes, whatever you need for your style of beer. Mash out,
Mhm.
crash. Okay, so I have not tried that. That's a good one, Jamil. I mean, that to me is the same thing as a standard mash. You just have held your mash at the mash out temperature for longer.
Right.
Right.
And that makes sense to me.
Yeah, that's a good. I'm with that.
Yeah.
I would
Sage
also say-
advice right there.
I would also say there
That's
is a
why I brought it
concern.
up.
Yeah, all right. This is what I do. I'm an idea guy.
Right.
I would say
On
too,
the-
the last thing I'd say is please make sure that your system is well built and safe. and when you go to sleep with all of this energy and electricity and or
Blowing.
propane
Yeah.
running
Yeah,
around your brewery
if
all
you're on gas,
day.
forget about it. It's got to be electric.
Oh man, waking up to smoke alarms, that'd be bad. So
Yeah.
that would be the big, let's be safe here and have an
Mhm.
intrinsically safe system with GFCIs and
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
everything set up so that when you do this and you hold this for 8 hours, 10 hours, it's not going to burn your house down.
All right. On that sage piece of advice, let's take our last break, and we'll be back right after this. All right, we're back. We're doing a live Q&A with our good longtime friend of the Brewing Network and the brewing community, Michael Mufasa Ferguson, and been having some fun, getting some good questions answered. All right, if you do have questions, send them in. Brewstrong at thebrewingnetwork.com, and we will get to them. Toot sweet. All right. Next question.
All right. You can see if we can manage this one in our remaining time. I didn't take good notes on it. Emails a little long. Joe has sent us an outstanding email again back in 2010. He would like to hear a show about full volume mashing. He's done 30 plus batches. Basically, pluses and minuses of full volume mashing, which is, many people say brewing a bag is full volume, even though it doesn't necessarily have to be. Um, kind of in essence, it's a question about if I target 1.25 versus 1.5 quarts per pound versus I do an all of my water in my mash, what are some pluses and minuses about my mash thickness? And does it matter over a certain amount? Am I affecting, again, fermentability? Am I affecting body, anything as a
Yeah,
result?
fermentability changes, but it's not huge. I mean, going from a really thin mash to a really thick one, it'll swing it just a little bit.
Hmm.
But that's one thing. The enzymatic, you're diluting the concentration of your enzymes, so might on the one hand slow it down, on the other hand speed it up. So you may have to just keep it in there a little longer, give it more recirculation.
Hmm.
Are we
So,
talking having the sparge water in it as well?
No
Yeah,
yeah,
sparge.
so
everything.
Yeah.
Mufasa,
Yeah,
you sell all
it's
kinds of equipment like this. You sell various kits. It's your standard mash, again, 1.25, 1.5, and on all these all-in-ones, the difference between a standard mash and a full volume mash, maybe it pushes 1.75 because you're almost a full volume already on half of your beers if you're not brewing a 4%er or something. Um, so yeah, exactly what you asked, Mike Mufasa.
Problem is size of your vessel. I
Hmm.
mean, um, if you put all the water in and all the grain in there like that,
Well, it also depends
1.75, yeah.
on, the strength of the beer. So if you're
Uh,
making a much higher gravity beer, your free water is going to be less than if you're making a smaller gravity beer. You're going to have a lot more just water. The amount of grain is
yeah.
going to differ, but the amount of water is probably going to be close to the same. It'll be a little bit more for the bigger one, but um, yeah. Yeah, Mike.
For me, I think this kind of, I mean, nowadays brewing a bag, single vessel brewing, all of these things, it's kind of all sized so that you could do something like this where you could do a
Mhm.
single volume, no sparge, if you will.
Hmm. Yeah, they're
Uh,
designed for that. Yeah.
you're gonna have to. My thought would be you're gonna have to account for the efficiency of the mash being a little bit low. And
Hmm.
I have a 3 vessel at my house, and
True.
I'm fly sparging, and I'm up in the 90-85% efficiency. And I would think without any sparge, I'm much lower, 60, 65. So there's going to be more grain needed
Hmm.
and but
Yeah.
home brewing, like Jamil has said 100 times, that's a couple dollars. We're not talking thousands of dollars or hundreds of, and then I would think if your kettle's sized for that volume, for kettle full to boil this beer, you're good. So the thing would be you probably need a bag, and you wouldn't want to have like a mash tun where you're trying to run it into a kettle at full volume, because then you need 2 kettle sized vessels where you could just do it in one with a bag or a basket. So that's where
So
I'm at, is this has been done. This is now kind of the most popular way to do it in home
right.
brewing. And
Yeah, Joe asked us in 2010 before we had the equipment we have right now. You're 100% correct,
Yeah.
Mike.
Or the invention
and-
of the internet. Yes.
yeah, okay, Joe. All right. So there is a lot of equipment out there designed to where you can do full volume mashes, and I have one of them. It's the Anvil Foundry, and you can sparge or not sparge, and I'll tell you, the bigger impact is the geometry of what you're using. Mike, as you said, if you use the bag is pretty much, you get that full space of what's in there. But when you buy these pieces of equipment, they don't come with a bag; they come with a basket. Now you have dead space outside of the basket. So even though you might have quote unquote full volume, a portion of that volume is outside of the basket.
yes.
So the plus minus, you're going to have a gravity shift. Are you going to have a flavor shift? It's going to be a different recipe. Uh, I guess if you're to the point to where you have to make the absolute perfect beer, then maybe you don't want to ask this question. But if you're at the point where you want to make good beer, you can make good beer. You can make beer that was our buddy Shane has all his effing friends drinking up on him.
Ah,
But yeah, pluses or minuses. Like you said, Mike, a few bucks and a few pounds of grain. Up to you. I'm trying to. It's kind of got to be what works for you. If that's what
yeah,
you have.
yeah, I would just say I'm thinking of it in terms of sparge. So when he says full
Yeah,
volume, I'm thinking
yeah,
no sparge. So that's what I would call it, is
right,
a no sparge mash. And
exactly.
the big thing is going to be that efficiency, and how do you account for that? And it all depends, like you said, what type of equipment are we using? Is it basket? Is it bag? Is it, and
Mhm.
even with the basket, what type of basket is it? What are the geometry of it, kind of thing? I mean, these kind of things would have to be worked out as you built it, but I think go for it. And I think of, I would say, and I've heard this from Jamil and John and everything, is usually those lower efficiency beers sometimes bring more flavor to the party. I've heard of over sparging, where you end up with over efficient mashes, and then the beer can be a little less
Dextrinous.
ideal,
Yeah.
dextrinous, or even a tannic if
Yep.
you're getting too thin at the end of that run. So there are things that, I think there's advantages there for homebrewers. I would never see
Yeah,
it in a commercial setting, but
I'm sure that it lowers the efficiency somewhat
yes,
because
it does.
you're not rinsing the grain, you know, you're just
right,
draining the grain. And
Yeah.
right.
this is in Japan. We don't use mash presses, although there's some places stateside that use mash presses. So
Mhm.
um I guess this is the traditionalist coming out in me. It's like, what are you talking about? That sort of thing. It sounds like sounds more like you're doing a party guile. It's
Yeah.
like, you put in all that water, you let it drain, then you put in some more water, make a small beer.
You old man.
Yeah,
Get
I
off
know.
my lawn.
Yes, get off my lawn.
They're giving
It's
up the small beer,
All
for better
right.
for worse.
Some great questions. Keep up sending in the great questions. We do appreciate it. Like I said, while we're still addressing the backlog of the way back time, we're all caught up on the new ones. And if you send your question in, we'll get it right to the front of the queue. So no worries. Send your questions in, brewstrong@thebrewingnetwork.com. And don't forget to support our fine sponsors, and especially the lovely Blickman Engineering crew. Great folks. They've been paying for the show it's coming up on decades, folks.
wow.
Coming up on decades. Uh, because they're just that wonderful a group of people. And don't forget, they're going to have their Black Friday sale. It is starting November 25th, Monday, through Cyber Monday, December 1st. and all the fine details will be on the website. And if you sign up for their email thing, you'll get a notification November 24th, filling in on all the fine details. That'll be both on the Anvil and the Blickman sites, and lots of goodies there that you can get. All right. Thank you again to our dear friend Mufasa.
Thank
It's
you.
good to see you
Thanks,
again.
Mufasa.
So nice.
One of these days, hopefully we can get together. Maybe it'll be up in Canada. Who
It
knows?
might be, but I'm going to try to hit the West Coast before I go. I have a lot of people there, including my brother. So
Yeah. All right.
I will attempt to get that way, and if I do, I will let everybody know.
Well, and I will be on a cruise out there in end of September, beginning of October 2025.
Okay, well
For fall colors and all that. So maybe we
Mhm.
can get together while we're there. I don't know. You
well
never know.
we can always try. And Mike, if you ever get out this way, look me up.
Oh yeah, I'm thinking I got to plan a trip out to H-Town.
Yeah, I mean
I
we
got to
don't
check
have
it out.
all the breweries we used to have. Several have closed, but we got the Survivors, and they're doing pretty good.
There you go.
You know.
Hold my tongue on that, Mufasa.
All right.
All right, they're doing.
Thanks everybody. Brew strong.
Brew strong.
Brew strong.